I've actually been looking for a place like this for a really long time. It was a place built by Chinese for Chinese in early 1900s. 1915 is when it was first established. As I've been here, I've gotten quite interested in Chinese American history because it was really something that I didn't learn about growing up. I mean, we learned that Chinese built the railroads, but aside from that, not too much. 1848 to 1856 or something, there was like 24,000 Chinese that came to the US in search for gold. There's a lot of history in between the first arrival of Chinese in the US and the establishment of this town. It's kind of a topic for another video. Locke, California appears to be the only Chinese-built frontier town in America that remains standing as of today. The small rural town of Locke has withstood the threat of fire and floods, the pain of poverty, discrimination, and neglect and abandonment by its original residents. But how did the hundreds of Chinese that built Locke end up in the Americas in the first place? Certain political and social conditions in the Qing Dynasty China made life very difficult for many. When word of a gold mountain in California came to the Canton region, the news spread like California's wildfires. Gold Mountain was all the people could talk about. Many people assumed that if they could get to this gold mountain, all their problems would be solved. After the year 1848, thousands of Chinese left China and sailed to California in search of their fortunes. However, not long after their arrival, these immigrants soon realized that life in this foreign land wouldn't be any easier than it was back at home. When many failed to obtain a fortune in gold, the Chinese sought out employment in other industries. Thousands of Chinese were hired to work on extensive levee projects in California's Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta. Their knowledge of how to develop farmland in river valleys, learned from farming the Pearl River Delta region in southern China, was used to construct a large network of earthen levees that eventually turned 500,000 acres of swamp into some of California's most valuable farmland. The reclaimed land was able to support large farms, and the expansion of the pear and asparagus industries, along with other crops, created a demand for cheap manual labor. Many of the Chinese workers stayed in the area and made a living as farm workers and sharecroppers, settling in towns in the regions such as Walnut Grove, Isleton, Rio Vista, and Cortland. The town of Locke was founded in 1915 after a fire destroyed the Chinese community in a nearby Walnut Grove. It isn't clear how the fire started. One report, from the Sacramento Bee, said the fire began in a Japanese woman's home near the river when the oil stove on which she was cooking was overturned. Another report in the Sacramento Union said the fire started with a lighted cigarette in a cleaning establishment. Water was thrown on the flaming gasoline and caused the flames to immediately spread to all parts of the small shop. Although every effort was made to save the Chinese homes and stores, the strong north wind fanned the flames, causing them to sweep everything before them. Because of laws barring Chinese from naturalization, and also laws that prevented foreigners from owning land, the Chinese were only able to secure a verbal lease for roughly 9 acres of land from George Locke, who owned an area known as Lockport along the Sacramento River levee. Locke was the last of the Sacramento River Chinatowns to be built. Locke became a thriving Chinese community serving the area's workforce, which consisted mainly of Chinese laborers working in the asparagus fields. The town eventually grew to 14 acres and consisted of plain 1- and 2-story wooden buildings. With no police to regulate the town, bars, gambling houses, and opium dens quickly developed, operating behind commercial storefronts. By 1920, Locke was a popular location for Prohibition-era speakeasies, and was providing recreational facilities to both the agricultural workforce and Caucasians from nearby cities. At Locke's peak, the town's population averaged at about 600 people, but on weekends, during the agricultural growing season, it rose up to 1,500. Locke began a slow decline in the 1930s during the Great Depression. The end of Prohibition in 1933 and the decline of the asparagus industry meant that fewer people came to the town. In addition, increased mechanization in the agricultural industry began to reduce the need for unskilled farm labor. Locke, after World War II saw many of the younger second-generation Chinese Americans leave the town for the cities in search of better economic opportunities. Locke is currently designated as a National Historic Landmark. If you find yourself in the Bay or Sacramento areas, I highly recommend stopping by this town.